Yay, yay, yay. Welcome back to the Foxhole. Foxtrotting in the Foxhole. Season 10, Episode 17, number 305 overall. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan, coming to you live from Eagle's Nest 2, Studio B, on a super Saturday afternoon. Sitting here in the Metroplex. Well, I'm not in the Metroplex. Actually, more in the bunker, which is Studio B. But we've got it set up like the Metroplex with a little MLS, the Five Stripes, really taking it to Philadelphia Union, and obviously watching the fifth major. As always, like, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Definitely need all kinds of love there. And folks have been checking out the aftershocks, been seeing a uptick in viewers there. We have another aftershocks coming this week. I did an episode with the corner man, so a lot of fun stuff in the foxhole this week, and that's kind of why we're getting here Saturday, because we're just putting out so much content. Gotta take a minute to actually get it out there, and so that's why we're a little bit late. Plus, we may have had too many adult beverages on one of these nights as well, but we're not saying that for real. All right, enough of the nonsense. Want to be a part of the Foxhole experience, being a guest on Aftershocks with the scene whenever we get that going again. FTINFX at gmail.com or leave us a message 541-525-0896. Love to hear from you. Okay, let's do some open face and finally get 305 on the tracks. Well, another tumultuous week has passed, and as usual, we were not short when it comes to shenanigans. The football and war conversation and how certain people I would never thought got their nose out of joint about it. Yes, we have lost 13 servicemen in a what is now just a conflict with Iran. And of course, going back as long as I know, is football being a game that even Teddy Roosevelt loved when they tried to abolish it in 1905. Gave the virtues of why we needed to keep football. And given the warmonger that TR was, what's true and what's not, as far as that guy is concerned. But this is not a history lesson, but it's more of, football and war. It's I don't know. I feel silly even having this conversation that people are getting crazy like, no, you can't this is real war. People are dying. People have always been dying, and we've always made that kind of reference. Why is the quarterback the field general? Yeah, I get where people are coming from, but we can't be so soft and oversensitive when we're damn well desensitized to everything else. And certain people, I guess I don't need the name drop as far as famous folks who've got bigger platforms than I do, obviously. That they are, I don't know, I wouldn't say outspoken. That's not the right word. I almost would say militant on some points and then get their nose twisted about, yeah, okay, so Trump showed a, a football video while making a war reference. It's Trump. That guy doesn't, go by anybody's playbook. It would be the same if Obama or Biden. As far as me being offended, like I get where people are coming from, and there's we have learned some, I guess, in terms of our being more sensitive, but yeah, football's a pretty violent game, and it's pretty much based on the principles of war. And you sort of think of it's not a sexy war is not as sexy, obviously, and maybe we should grow up and maybe focus more about entertainment. But let me ask you, before I move on, don't they have video games? Do they have no problems with selling that are based on war? All kinds of great movies. Isn't we doing? Is it like got the movie that's about Nuremberg? It just kills me. People want to get sanctimonious, but yeah, we have war and all sorts of other forms of entertainment. Okay, get the train back on the tracks. I was thinking about this. This has kind of been a hot minute now, and there's been so much going on as far as craziness in the sports universe. But one of the fixers that's been involved in this NCAA games being fixed, he pled guilty. I said, okay. But it just made me think for like 25 seconds or so. Did he roll on anybody? Or did it just be, is this just another one of those, like many times before, like the baseball players way back in the day, basically got a lecture, but the cat that was the main supplier, he ended up doing hard time. And I'm wondering about comes to the players and I'm sure coaches as well that have been caught up in this nonsense. Do they skate and there are going to be a couple of stooges that end up doing time in max? Super max, what, the one out in Colorado or someplace harsh like that. All right. Yeah, it just makes me wonder though. You don't hear of anybody important facing the heat. That might be a good thing because they can still make money for people. Boy, that's cynical. Yeah, cynical indeed. Anyway, okay, we'll do a local one here. This will. This is another one that I kind of smile about. By the way, I saw this one picture of a Oregon Duck uniform helmet combo because you have these weirdos out there that have these Facebook pages. One I hadn't seen before, obviously pre Nike and pre a lot of things, but it looks so dope. It was very odd too. Anyway, Uncle Phil Knight, that's right, Chairman Knight of Nike, and basically the architect of the what do we call this? The Oregon Empire, because we can't say the dynasty, because you're going to win near these to be a dynasty. What would you call it? The Oregon Empire. He's it's going to be interesting when we get down to these big races, and this is a big year, and midterm year, and Chris Dudley, who used to play for the Blazers, and the Knicks, and some other teams. He's running for governor again, and he's running as a Republican. And Uncle Phil is donating $1 million towards his campaign. Basically, like saying, this is how I'm rolling. And this is going to, anger the Ryan Clarks and Jamel Hills of the world. And boy, is Jamel Hill biting off a lot these days. I've been following anything about the shenanigans following that dingbat. And others in terms of why are we working for these guys who obviously donate to a certain party and like certain people that they're not in alignment with what we believe. But money talks. But I'd be curious to see if it causes any ripples. It usually doesn't. I think most folks, this is a a pretty blue, at least when you're talking about Portland and Eugene for the most part. And you don't ever really hear people get cranky, as far as, when it comes to it doesn't get in the way of their duck love. And I always appreciate that. But I do feel nationally, as far as some of the athletes that have very strong ties to Nike, and you know who they are. Something to keep an eye on. Something else to keep an eye on. The Tisch family. Yeah, they're partnering up with the Maras. They own the New York Football Giants, who are now ice cold chilling with John Harbaugh set to lead them into the future. But it's I can't confirm this, but it appears the Tish family is retreating from ownership and slowly going to divest. I guess Homie appearing in the Epstein files, and something tells me he was getting his freaky deaky on with the young ones. And, if that's the case, yeah, it is definitely duck and cover. And I'm sure the Billionaire Boys Club got in the room where they had a Zoom call or Google Meet. And I said, hey, man, because I'm sure that anybody that was getting their freak on Diddy style, yeah, you're NFL's like, nah, man, we're bulletproof, but we don't need that stench. Keep an eye on that one too as we move deeper into 2026. Ooh, Philadelphia pulls a goal back in stoppage time. Interesting. Okay, speaking of NFL, how about CBS? Yeah, the Tiffany Network. They're working on a new $3 billion deal for the Sunday package, which is kind of interesting because I was looking at $3 billion and thinking, good, at this point, boy, that's kind of a deal. And then I came to my senses and said, yeah, okay, for the Sunday games, that's still pretty hefty, and that's an incredible property to have, even though it's not as good as when they had the NFC way back in the day. But that's a story for another time. As far as this is concerned, I wonder, is it like a first right of refusal thing here? I'm thinking we're just working on a deal to renew where nobody else is in the bidding process. I gotta look more into that. But hey, cool for them if they get it done, can get it done, because we were talking about this recently as far as the NFL trying to wrap up a lot of its media rights deals this year, which is going to basically set the tone for everybody else. And everybody else is kind of waiting since the NFL wants to get this out of the way. As the NBA already does for the next decade or so. Oh man, it is so funny. I leave it to a controversy, or not really. They was one for about 38 seconds, and then we aren't talking about it anymore. But how Megan our favorite Miss Rapinoe, always finding a way to try to stay relevant some way, and yeah, I guess put on probably Sue's podcast or somewhere talking crazy, because we all know that flag football is going to be a part of the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles. And flag football is going to be a showcase. We know Tom Brady's showcasing it all around the globe and making money. Pulled it from Saudi, and now they're playing it at BMO, where my LAFC plays. We somehow hoping to get an eyeball on all that craziness when it happens, but let's not get off the tracks. Megan R thinks Colin Kaepernick should be not only the flag bearer leading in, but he should be playing quarterback because he thinks he would rock. Wow. There was so much to unpack here, but it is Megan R. And this may be, unfortunately, because we have the Men's World Cup this year, she will find her ways to insert herself in some narrative. But hopefully, we don't get too many more great takes like that as far as Megan R is concerned. I mean, how do we even address that? I mean, I guess if we wanted to try out, it would be interesting. That's the only football competition he could probably get near. But even then, I think he has found a way to blackball himself from even things like that. Hmm. Okay. You talked about this, a little bit earlier in the week. And boy, this Dak Prescott thing. It's just, dude, it's funny. But somehow, because he didn't go down he didn't finish going down the highway as far as with his baby mama and getting married and all that kind of stuff. I think it's kind of funny that The other one is the guy Ferguson, who's getting ready to marry one of the Cavenders. I think it's Hannah, and they're doing the same thing, having the joint bachelorette party on a yacht. Yeah, okay. Well, we'll just see if we can get two for two. You can't make this stuff up. Another good point that people were yapping about this week. Danny Cannell being on a couple of platforms. Yeah, because he was a rant that he did on X. And Danny Cannell used to play for Florida State, had a cup of coffee with the New York Football Giants. And he's on all the shows that I watch in the daytime, building content, we're looking for tech jobs, that sort of thing. And he's talking. It's interesting. I'm not a parent, and I haven't been involved in youth sports and that sort of thing in 3 lifetimes. But he's like, man, we need to ban youth sports on Sunday, and on weekends anything before 8 a.m. I thought, oh, okay, you're just a cranky parent. But I can imagine with everything else you have to do, especially in the pay to play world, that you got to drive some ridiculous distance to compete at 8 a.m. I mean, that's basically what was dealing with Kobe, right? He wanted to go on a helicopter for some basketball game that started at 9. So I thought it was interesting because quite a few people brought it up. I wouldn't say it rose to a national discourse, but there definitely seems to be a lot of cranky parents out there when it comes to not only the distances that they have to travel, but just the stuff happening at inconvenient times. Hmm. Another thing I didn't know, high schoolers using AI for their highlight reels. Basically just saying, no, yo, you need to check this tape out of me. Yeah, that's some gangster stuff. I'm not surprised by it. I just am wondering. These folks do know that people in the recruiting trail would probably fact check and not necessarily believe something you generated or just got mysteriously appears on YouTube. But gotta love that. Creating your own highlight reels with AI where you're just making yourself look as badass as you possibly can be. That's pretty clever. Wow. Okay, we'll leave you with this one. Livy Dunn, the NIL sensation. More blonde looks and more little boys crazy about her than achievements as a gymnast at LSU. But hey, she is gonna be married to Paul Skynes, and they are gonna be the JFK Jr. and Caroline Bessette, of the sports world coming up. This we know. She's gonna be an actress, and I guess she's gonna have a reoccurring role in the Baywatch reboot. Of course she is. I'm like going, well, hell, if she can act well, even halfway, just put her in, and the people are gonna watch the damn show. What the hell are y'all thinking? Stay tuned to that. And Angel Reese was like, hey, I got a bit part in this. I'm like, no, but we really want to see Libby Dunn. All right, folks. We are off and running. When we return, we will take the high view above the campuses of America. See you momentarily. Oh, yay, ah, yay, ah, yay. Welcome back to the Foxhole. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan here. Ice cold chilling like a funky Medina on a super Saturday. Getting ready to have some nice weather here. Gonna get this podcast cranked out so I can go play with the drone because now it's kind of clear and the wind's dying down a little bit. Anyway, we'll use the drones actually. I think the homies and homettes probably had a funky Friday last night and probably TGI'd after as much as they could. So we'll cut them some slack and instead fly the drones over the UFO, and that'll count for our high view above the campuses of America. So yeah, what are the drones telling us this week as far as flying over the UFO and getting all those pulses? Well, I talked about this in Aftershocks. The whole thing of bringing together a committee. And there's so many people pushing back. And one of them is Uncle Luke. And it cracks me up. This mofo who's been paying people at the U, yeah, basically since he was, ever since the Howard Schellenberger days. I respect the man's love for that university and what he's done for the WNBA community, but he still cracks me up in the sense of if Trump and these guys try to take their money away, I'm going to be the one here fighting it. So you've got somebody like him that's really advocating this madness, wanting to put the fight. Somehow he thinks he's going to be elected office and become a player. Imagine that. A government that might have Uncle Luke and Stephen A. Smith. Will you be able to stomach that? You know, it's just cracking me up, man. This argument's getting so weird. Because, I think folks are, their fear of speaking out about this is lessening. And I'm talking about some of the coaches and some of the folks on the academic side and really calling out the insanity of it. I mean, nobody really has any plans, and I shudder to think if we throw it in the hands of the government, the president, and all those folks in terms of them, taking, chicken salad, making it chicken poop, and then making it into a waste treatment facility. It's kind of already that way right now, anyways, but it could be way more rancid. Yeah. In terms of how ugly this can get, now that the genie's been out of the bottle with this. And we'll see. Maybe some people can find a way to make political hay out of this in this midterm year. Because don't ever underestimate the opiate that sports is and how people might be able to manipulate it, as we've seen in the previous decade or so. Just something to, think about. Let me move on here. I know I'm kind of rambling, and I apologize for having too much fun here on a sweet Saturday. But I've been listening to some great talking points this week about college basketball and the propaganda that they're pushing out to us, that we're getting, incredible viewership. And this is like more popular than ever. And pretty much everybody that has a podcast is a broadcaster that's, not speaking officially, just they don't know where it's coming from. I mean, the people I talk to, college basketball is something they're watching out of the corner of their eye, but they're not paying attention that much. And I know this whole new way that Nielsen does things allows for these weird numbers where you think Bad Bunny Super Bowl was the greatest, and it's like you dig into it and the numbers don't quite say so. And I don't know whether this is cooking the books or it's just like straight out propaganda. Because in this day and age, you just go out and say something, and nobody's really gonna fact check it. And even if you do, They're not going to listen, or they're going to throw some analytical mumbo jumbo at you that says this is why you're wrong. But yeah, I'm just not buying this. I mean, yes, this time of year after football, you're going to have an uptick, but I'm not seeing it. And then, I think I have a pretty good feel on the pulse of things when it comes to sport, where, when folks are really excited about something and it's moving the needle, and this ain't moving the needle. And it's almost kind of an insult to tell us that it is, among all this other stuff. I mean, the building's already burning down as far as college sports is concerned. But this idea, like, oh, no, no, no. Or that great meme where, what is it, like the little dog and the house is burning down. Ooh, man. Okay, move on. Man, have you seen any of Deion Sanders' press conference lately? Man, Coach Sanders. Mm. I mean, you claim you'd never do that kind of stuff, but you do live in Colorado. Maybe you need to go to the Despo and, get yourself, some nice sativa. Go get yourself a nice glass piece and go take a few rips and chill the F out. I mean, he is so combative in these press conferences. And it's like, how dare you ask me? And I'm like, hey, bro, as a coach, you have not reached the point of where you're beyond reproach. What you did as a player doesn't carry to you who you are as a coach. And since you've gone to the big time, yeah, you had kind of a good year. Chicken dumplings conference that it is. But the fact is, it's kind of been bad. And at some point, people can't keep leaning on, well, what were they beforehand? I go, but what are they now? Hey, man, he can win a chip in a year or two. And, I've heard some good stuff this week as well when it comes to that clan and the fans that follow them. Right? We talk about the Dion sexuals and Shadur sexuals and like LeBron sexuals, that these folks are so into this and need, they're idols. And you say something about them, they will go to all levels of being irrational to defend their BS. And I look at some of the stuff going on in Boulder. Thank you for giving us stuff to talk about, but dude, you should take a few bongas and just chill. Okay, let me move on. Because, right, the heartbeat from Boulder to Cleveland is going to always provide content year round. The Red Hawks losing to UMass, that's obviously going to have all kinds of conversations. Get through the regular season 31-0, then losing the conference tournament. A lot of people backtracking, like Bruce Pearl, and they're probably right that because Akron is very good as well, that they may be two teams from the Mid American Conference. I mean, obviously, the Alabamas and Auburns, the Fat Cats, they don't want to hear that nonsense, especially because the NCAA tournament is still a moneymaker. But you have to think, for the sanity of all of this and still make it look like it's on the up and up, you kind of want teams like Miami of Ohio and Akron in this tournament. No? I mean, come on. It's just funny that seeing how triggered people are when it comes to Miami being in, some folks who walked it back, and now others who are saying, well, yeah, if they were all that, they still would have gotten through their conference tournament. Hey, I know these things hurt. Like Cal State Northridge Matadors getting bitched in the quarters by UCI. I think UCI is probably the best team in the Big West, but yeah, I was not happy about that last night. But Congratulations, Andy Newman. Another 20-win season. That's pretty impressive at Zelza and Nordoff, let me tell you. Back to back. Hope we can keep him for another year. The 818. The Syracuse fires Adrian Autry. I gotta wonder there. I used to be kind of a. It should be. I'll just say I was kind of like a groupie. Can't say I was like fan. I didn't go to Syracuse, but this is kind of like pre. Well, yeah, kind of pre before I was like really hardcore in the school. Like once I started going to see Sun, and all it became about the Matadors. But before that, I'd like follow a team like Syracuse and Jim Boeheim. When they had the Wayne, the Pearl, Washington, and Ronnie Cycli, and on and on. Obviously the Mellow Miracle and all those good things. And, Jimmy Boeheim off the sunset. Is Syracuse even? Is it possible for them to ever be relevant again? I mean, any of the schools, yeah, they're private schools and they've got some pretty decent endowments, but I just don't. I wonder, do they have, right, the hardcore donors that can fund a NIL roster that can compete in this landscape? And clearly, some of these schools that were in that old Big East, all those some of what we would call the blue bloods do. But I wonder when you look at a school like Syracuse, because it's kind of been a minute since they've really been relevant, and you wonder, can they ever be relevant like that again? Time will tell, huh? How about this one? No CBI this year. Ooh, are we so heartbroken about that? You remember the CBI tournament, don't you? The one that you have to pay to play in? Yeah. But hey, for the schools that still wanted to keep it going, it worked. I know that Oregon and CSUN played in the CBI one year, but they are canceling it this year. They say they will be back in 2027. Yeah, I think this is translation. We're gonna slowly dissolve. Maybe it does reboot as something else. I mean, and maybe that's just one more tea leaf to grab or breadcrumb and say, there's a major overhaul to the tournament coming as far as doing away with all of these nonsense tournaments and just making March a month long tournament with, I don't know, 90 teams or so. This is the kind of madness that we've been moving to all decade, so we shall see. The other thing that would cracked me up that the Big 12, that whole LED floor, futuristic and silly. They had to pretty much scrap it because nobody could grip and they were all sliding all over the place. It's just like, we're not quite ready to be that cool yet. Maybe down the road, but not now. See, what else do we have? It comes like I was thinking about cooking the books earlier. People were talking about how the numbers for the LSU South Carolina game recently. But one thing I was taken back about Texas actually taking down South Carolina to win the SEC crown. Basically, just saying Lady Dawn doing the finger wag to her. Mm-mm-mm. Lastly, you gotta love this one. Now, chew on this. Gus Johnson. Yeah, that guy. He thinks UConn could beat the WNBA champs if they played. Wow. That might be a matchup we'd like to see, especially since the ladies currently don't have an agreement. Other than the folks who are playing FIBA, they ain't doing much right now. All right, folks, that's what's happening high above campus. We'll do a little something something you probably know when we return momentarily. All right, then. Welcome back to the Foxhole. Faithful host Ken Harlan here. Some interesting results. So just watching sort of the recap after the soccer game. Dang. Let's see what Vandy did. Just put the beat down on Florida. One of the dark horses for the number one seed overall. Interesting. Okay, time for one of our favorite segments of the Foxtrotting and the Foxhole podcast. Something you should probably know, or things that happened this past week in the world of sports you might want to know or possibly care about. Remember we were talking about Logan Paul offering $1 million to go to see if any NFL player could whoop his ass in the ring? Well, he is under contractual obligation to the WWE, and they just said, nah, man. We're not going to have you end up like your brother in traction and not be able to get our money. Yeah, I know, crazy. It's kind of interesting, too, because I think he was kind of hoping more of going into the octagon with these guys as opposed to, an actual boxing. I think I mentioned that Le'Veon Bell was like, yo, bring it. I would love to beat on your behind. Which leads me to, ESPN insiders. And maybe this is just sour grapes about the Paramount world or something like that. I don't know. They gave UFC 326, which was last weekend, a D minus. I was like, well, then I guess there was nothing really to care about. And then I was looking through the recaps, and I was like, which is funny with Ronda Rousey coming out and saying her upcoming fight is the biggest deal in mixed martial arts. It's like UFC's a joke. It's like the only fight they could really get is Conor. It's just, oh wait, no one will sanction that. I was just like, damn, Ronda. She ain't lying, but I don't know if what she's got going on under the paws. I don't know if that's happening either. I mean, clearly we're so bored in this lifetime when it comes and always looking for entertainment. We know there'll be views and it'll be accessible. So, yeah, she's already saying she's the biggest deal right now in MMA history, and it's just like, man, right? I'm sitting here almost choking. I don't know what's more funny, that or what was it, like $900 to sit in like the second row of some WWE SmackDown. I'm not gonna know what's more delusional. Speaking of Dana White, that is, he says he's gonna give away 85,000 tickets, to this big rumble in the Capitol. That's gonna be in conjunction with America's 250 celebration. It was really cool when I was talking to the corner man about the big race in the streets. A lot of fun stuff as far as that conversation goes. Aftershocks 35, that'll be coming out probably sometime tonight because this is going to be coming out Saturday late afternoon. So keep an eye out for that. Let's see here. Let me just make an adjustment here. I got so much stuff going on. God, you've got a little WBC on. Italy's doing the voodoo it does, but Puerto Rico trying to rally. But what was I going to do here? Wait a minute. Yeah, I am. Got my eye over here at the players, the TPC Sawgrass. And Mr. Auberg is doing that voodoo that he do. We're in the third round, and he's on 15, and he's got a 4-stroke lead over Mr. Young. Yeah, and Mr. What's his face? I always pronounce his name. What is it? Throbozine. He's 10. Chandra Safi is 9. Yeah, I got some people at 9 and 8, but it's looking like Auberg's tournament to lose. Kind of weird, because like last week, Bay Hill Arnie's the party. Rory left, with spasms, and he's not making much of a deal here. Not sure what to make of this tournament thus far as some of the big names we're accustomed to. Now that we are in mid March and we can hear the faint strains of the theme to the Masters somewhere off in the distance. Although it'll be a lot of fun to watch tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. A lot can happen as far as being able to hold on to the unofficial major. 4-stroke lead, looking good though on 15. As long as he doesn't do anything stupid at 17 and 18. It made me think, because so I was hanging out the other night. We're having a little gathering up here at Eagle's Nest out in the true Metroplex, and we were watching a little live. This is like live from Singapore. And, Bryson at the time was leading, I think, by 3 strokes. Point being is, it is so unwatchable. We're sitting there having jello shots and drinking all kinds of other fun adult beverages. And I don't know. I was really trying to find why I should watch this, and chatting with friend of the show next door, Andy G, we're basically coming to the same conclusion when it comes to that particular circuit. You know, it's like the courses don't look like it's giving him that much of a challenge, and you've got big bags of cash, and these guys are just sitting here laughing all along the way. Yeah, it's like normally I just can't really get sucked into it, but since I was, hanging out and, enjoying some adult bevs with my neighbor and my roomie and stuff like that, and I said, okay, I'm gonna sit here and try to consume some of this, and I just found it to be beyond bland. All right, so like I said, we had a big episode with the Corner Man where we really broke down the 3 circuits and other spicy and tangy storylines from the world of motorsports. Definitely want y'all to check that out because we tackled everything from Jordan to, Mad Max is going to dominate, and whether or not a man over in Indy is going to do the unthinkable and where that will rank all time. Great conversation. Looking forward to that. All lost in that. You gotta give it up to Ryan Blaney. Yeah, I was talking about this on Aftershocks 34. Sort of breaking up the Jordan Mystique release for a weekend and the culture having to find something else to up their chest about. No doubt. But I gotta also, I'd be remiss if I didn't give that rock star, Mondo Duplantis, a little love. He's the pole vaulter extraordinaire, as he's broken his world record again. What is this, like something like the 15th time or something like that? This past week, he was able to jump, was it 20 feet, 8 inches and a quarter? Gee whiz, man. When you sit there and think about the evolution of the pole vault world record over the last 15 or 20 years, and I said, this guy, he's just, it's a rock star beyond belief, and especially a field event. You're not going to get the flowers from the rest of the world. You probably should. Boy, this is getting really interesting with this Puerto Rico Italy game. The soccer game I'm waiting for is on hold. It's like 8-6. Anyway, we're going to reset. We'll come back. We'll talk some association and other nonsense and keep it going here on this Super Saturday. See you momentarily. All right, then. Welcome back to the Foxhole. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan here. Ice cold chilling like a funky cold Medina. Shakedown Saturday yet? Mm-hmm. Okay, let's get to the association. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely had a lot to say about what went on earlier in the week on Aftershocks. Try to not duplicate too much of that here, but let's start off with Steve Kerr. Whining about the season being too long. I know, right? When it's like most of us who have some sanity about us have been saying that forever, knowing that the greedy, everyone says one thing, but I mean, the owners don't say that, but I mean, the players just like, shh, what do you mean? That's what, 10 less games? What is that? The 38 million I'm already making. Uh, there's just something about him and the whiny way he goes about these sessions in front of the media where he's got to lecture us. It just cracked me up when I heard the Korean co-sell Steve Kemp says, "See, this is why I like Jordan even more. That back in the day, Jordan went upside his head. Obviously, you've seen The Last Dance, you know that story, and or back in the day, just knowing it about that nonsense. But I'm like, yeah, I can see someone like Jordan, just bitch, shut the f up and going upside his head. Totally see that because every time he goes in front of the press, you just want to climb to the TV and give him a slap across the face and just goes, enough already. But we're not advocating violence over here. So, okay, let's get back to Bam Adebayo's 83. Whew, man. Yeah, we've marinated, put it in the air fryer, served it up on a nice good hoagie. Good grief. Yeah, the whole thing with him and D Wade, and now D Wade trying to diffuse it and blaming the media. Bam being pretty much unapologetic, which I have a problem with because I thought it was shameful, as I said the other day, and I'm quadrupling down on that. It's like I don't know if I want to and rant too much about it. I do love that many folks beyond the Kobeeites feel it's disrespectful to Kobe, disrespectful to Wilt, disrespectful to all the greats. You've got this, weird generation who's always like, oh, you guys just want to like hold on to the past and stuff. And that's not true. When somebody does something legitimate, we're just like, wow. And, I think it causes us to truly reevaluate the past. But crap like this, and somebody who's been a pretty good player, but is not somebody who's putting up 83 points unless it's some manufactured nonsense like you saw on that particular night. I like that there's pushback. I mean, the whole asterisk talk, whatever. You're not gonna see anything stupid like that. But I do like that folks are not wholeheartedly embracing what was a travesty of many shams of a mockery. Okay, enough about that. Here's another one of these things, and I don't know if this is just more of being a old curmudgeon, but you saw how SGA, Mr. Gilgis Alexander, he passes Wilt Chamberlain's mark for consecutive 20-point games. It was one of those, guess what? Nobody cares. You've got your folks, and I'm glad they've got a job. Hopefully, not interns and they're actually getting paid with bennies and whatnot, who can come up with these great numbers so you can always drop these bits that'll get us clicks and things like that. But it's like, yeah, it's a great stat. It's another one of those stats. It's just like, yeah, okay, wonderful. No one really cares at this point when we're just sort of like dropping down These achievements that you can just come up with. Don't get me wrong, going for 20 that many games in a row, it's impressive, but it's just okay. You get where I'm coming from. Hopefully, maybe not. You tell me, FTINFX@gmail.com, but maybe I need to take a chill pill and actually appreciate some of these achievements that people seem to always throw at us. Okay. It's kind of interesting, when the week started. And so, lots happened obviously since then. This is the last episode, really, especially since we're doing this on a Saturday. But BET, not BET, but Bet, excuse me, good grief. Looking at the notes wrong. But Bet MGM, they had their power rankings. Gotta love a betting partner throwing out power rankings. But they had when the week started. But they had San Antonio over Oklahoma City, the Pistons 3, Boston 4, and the Knicks 5. And I think after this week, yeah, I don't know if I have the Pistons that high. I think the Pistons are kind of showing a little paper mache, shall we say? Those shacks that after they go, I'm gonna make a war reference because some of them can come at me, but right, when the B-29s flew over Tokyo and hit those paper houses, basically, and how just city burned up. Kind of that's what I'm looking at Detroit and kind of seeing those. Seeing the bombers off in the distance there. I'm not feeling it. Same thing with Cleveland. Still not buying into that, even with Harden. Boston got a little level. I think it's fair to say. Got the big win. Right. They pummeled the Cavaliers, but they lose tough ones in Oklahoma and San Antonio. And as far as being able to get ring number 19, you're going to have to probably get through one of those two teams. Or Denver, obviously. I mean, because let's face it, Wimby and his foot soldiers. I mean, I was watching. What was that night? I can't remember what night it is. Just part of the scenery, but they were playing Houston, a Houston team that's in the thick of these of it all. He got a big win last night with KD, the buzzer beater. I think it was last night. But so it was Wimby in San Antonio, and they beat Houston to a pulp. I'm sitting there watching this team. What are they? Something like 16-2 in their last 18, something like that. Impressive wins along the way. I was saying earlier in the year, and I'm still sticking to it until they prove me wrong, which they probably will, that this is still not their year yet. But I don't know. The more I see of them, the scarier it becomes. It's a scary team. Playoffs are going to be fun. And speaking of, I just saw that the chef, he's going to be out another 10 days. You're going to really ask, didn't they just shut him down? As they would say in that snarky voice, y'all know you ain't going to win it anyway. So just shut him down and figure out a way to retool, put something around him, or possibly even move him, which I don't think would ever happen. But yeah, I don't think there's any point in bringing him back out this year. Just the way that team is and what they're up against in the West. Okay, let's go down the coast. Clippers looking really good. Put up 153 early in the week. Kawhi doing Kawhi things and not, being hurt. I mean, remember what a dumpster fire that team was? Yeah, they're not in the playing round at this point. So I don't know. I said they could be scary, and they are. But how about the team up the road at the Crypt? They've won, 3 or 4 in a row and been pretty impressive. Actually got some impressive wins, as I was talking about the other day. Obviously beating the Knicks and the Timberwolves. without LeBron. And then they beat a Bulls team that's not relevant. They put up probably 140. The more disturbing thing is that they gave up 130. LeBron was back, and lo and behold, nobody played defense. But yeah, the Lakers looking good. Big matchup tonight with the Nugs. Really curious to see how that goes. Okay. Oh, let's see here. Dwight Howard announcing his retirement. You know, I know you have to make it official, but ain't White been done for like 3 or 4 years since we've actually seen him in a meaningful NBA game? Yeah, it's what. However, this is dragged out. It's one of those things you really can't even celebrate and tell him to enjoy, happy trails because well, we know what his off ramp has been like. It's been quite interesting. Yeah, there's been some good and bad as far as that movie goes. Spicy for sure. Wow. Still have nothing. Let me see here. Wait a minute before we go here. Yeah, I'll save that for a closer look. We'll wrap this up so we can go talk some beautiful game live on the other side. See you momentarily. All right then. Welcome back to the Foxhole. Your faithful host, Kid Harlan here. Foxtrotting in a Foxhole, episode 305, season 10, episode 17. For those of you keeping score at home, as always, like and subscribe our YouTube channel. We could use the help of the algorithm. Also, you'll know when we're dropping new content. We try to post everything up there. Apologize for getting the YouTube version of this a little late of last episode, but it's up there and it's always available at Spotify and the other platforms that it spits out to. But yeah, definitely like and subscribe to FTINFX Media's YouTube channel. We really appreciate that. Really appreciate the folks who have come on aboard and have been checking out the content that we've been putting out. Lots of love there. Lots of fun coming as far as FTINFX Media goes. This is we're cooking. Okay, let's talk some beautiful game life. Man, a lot to unpack here. Long week. Some of the stuff seems like it was 2 lifetimes ago. Just the way things happen in a tumultuous week like it has been. Right, the United States women's national team winning the She Believes Cup. Yeah, it wasn't as easy as it probably could have been or how folks thought it should have been. But in the end, with Miss Thompson, the former Angel City FC, now of Chelsea, getting things done, and the ladies hosting another trophy, or hoisting, our buddy Lindsay Heaps. Yeah, cool stuff. And obviously, the NWSL starting last night, the return of Sophia Wilson playing against Trinity Rodman. Big show over there at Audi Park in DC. DC's happening. They just dropped some new renderings of the Commander's Palace at the RFK site. A lot of fun they're having in the Capitol. Good place to be. But yeah, props to the ladies. Emma Smith. Right, that jacket Emma was wearing. Right, that Letterman's jacket. Everybody's like, damn, that's fly, Emma. How do I get my hands on one of those, man? Okay. What else do we got here? Oh, man, no, it's been such an interesting week. Wrexham giving Chelsea all they wanted in the FA Cup with the extra time, but Chelsea 4-2, but still with the extra time. And then we had a big UCL match day. What a Titanic tilt it was at the Parc des Princes with PSG and Chelsea, a rematch of last year's Club World Cup, and just PSG and Chelsea have a rich Champions League history. Some incredible matchups, incredible personalities. Some folks playing for both clubs, and anyway, yeah, it was quite the affair. But in the end, Paris puts up 5 goals. My man, Kivlija Kvaratskhelia with a brace. The PSG wins 5-2, so they go back to England this week with a 3-goal advantage. We'll see what's going on with that, especially since PSG or League One has let PSG opt out of playing this weekend, which doesn't have the Chelsea people happy. As Chelsea lost to Newcastle today, but I'm sure their minds are going to be preoccupied with the return tilt in England. I mean, Bodo Glint continuing to destroy folks. The great story that is the Wonder Children from above the Arctic Circle. I had a feeling with them drawing Sporting, this was going to be the case. Even though Sporting was pretty impressive in the league phase. Other than that, the main story of this match day is just England having a rough day overall. And you saw, if you were watching the CBS Paramount feed with Kate Scott and the crew, old Jamie Carragher, he's about to have a nervous breakdown with how bad the English teams look. I mean, Liverpool losing, Chelsea obviously losing, City losing, Arsenal, I think, drawing, and not a good time for the Premier League in England in this edition, but there's still time in the second leg to reverse all of this. Be keeping an eye on that. Over in CONCACAF Champions League, MLS is pretty much rolling. Right? MLS teams are, when they're playing the folks from Central America and Mexico, they're taking the belt to the ass, at least thus far. I mean, the really shock is that Inter Miami and LAFC kind of struggled. I mean, they came away with draws. I mean, Inter Miami was scoreless, and LAFC just, yeah, that's going to be interesting. They have to go to Central America this week 1-1 and not really being able to find the back of the net. The Sun seems like he's pretty lost there. Another thing that I thought was interesting, the Sounders blasting the Whitecaps in Champions League. Galaxy looked pretty good too, actually, now thinking about it. And good grief. San Diego FC battering Toluca, and they were down a man probably after the 28th minute. Boy, that San Diego football team, the San Diego Football Club team is fun to watch. They're very impressive. They're rivals of, as far as me being an LAFC fan, but damn, I just watch them and I just continue to marvel at what they're doing in their second year. As far as MLS is concerned, LAFC is among the teams that remain perfect, but like I just said a minute ago, teams they're not putting the ball in the back of the net. Teams are basically running that low block, in which LAFC is not really adjusting well. Teams park the bus and basically say, "Hey, make a mistake somehow, catch you napping." But yeah, we're just gonna bunch you up and just really deny a lot of the creative pathways that you might have with guys like Sun and Denny Bowenga, which I understandable. Mark DeSantos is going to have to figure out a way to unlock that. Another thing I thought was interesting. I mean, the Caps getting blasted in CONCACAF as far as Cascadia goes, but over the weekend they blast the Timbers. I think it was like 4-1. Mm-hmm. Another big news over in the MLS. Oscar Brea, yeah, he's been at Orlando City OCSC got like 6 years. It's a pretty good job, but you had to think, as Judas Priest would say, some heads are going to roll. Given some of the poor performances they've had off the gate, I know they've been flirting with Griezmann, but Griezmann's been flirting with everybody as far as coming to MLS, and it never happens. But apparently, the folks in Orlando, or the powers that be behind Orlando City, have had enough, and they have sent him walking after, I don't know, like I said, 6 seasons. Pretty crazy. Also crazy, MLS banning 2 players for life. One of them, Yaya Boa, who played for LAFC. Gambling. And MLS is saying, nah, man, which kind of makes me wonder what kind of chicanery was going on there. But these 2 gentlemen have received lifetime bans. I mean, that's a Pete Rose kind of shit for you. Pardon my language, but yeah, can't wait to dig into that more because kind of you see the story, but you're not really getting a lot of information, or at least I couldn't see it yet. But I will definitely speak more to this when I know more to talk about for sure. I mean, when you get a ban, that's pretty hardcore. You were doing some messed up stuff, especially in this day and age. How about this game down in Brazil? Because it was a big brawl. This is like Cruzeiro and Atletico MG. 23 red cards. Do you even have anybody left? You hand out 23 effing red cards? Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. Um, yeah, I know it's kind of interesting. I was kind of waiting for this MLS match with the Crew in Nashville, but this Puerto Rico Italy game still going on and on. Gotta give the Five Stripes a little credit. They finally showing some life under Tata in his second stint there. They had been kind of winless going into this. Still not understanding what's going on with Philadelphia, but then again, maybe it's taking a minute or two to get used to things. You get rid of your longtime skipper. It's my favorite song, The Age of, not my favorite song, but one of my favorite songs that I like to hum in this podcast. PILs, The Order of Death. This is what you want. This is what you get. This is what you want. This is what you get. You're kind of seeing that right now with the Union off to a very, 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 very poor start in 2026. Let me see here. Before we slip away, a little bit of movement over here at the players as Mr. Young now is at minus 11. So, yeah. Albert Jess, I think, wrapped up 17. Or no, is he going to 18? But yeah. So, he leads by 3, probably heading into Sunday. Okay, when we return, we will do some Nightfall of Diamonds. All right, then. Welcome back to the Foxhole. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan here. Ice cold chilling on like a funky Dina on a super Saturday. Sorry for fumbling over my words. It's just that kind of day. I know St. Patty's Day coming up. Just saw the river or the it gets painted green, dyed green, I should say, for every year in Chicago and all that stuff. And yeah, amateur hour extraordinaire incoming. Who knows? Maybe we'll go out in the field and have some fun for St. Patty's Day. Create an episode for the scene so I can get that off the rails again. Just let it out the fly. Maybe that'll happen. All right, we're at that point where it's time to do a little Nightfall of the Diamonds. You know, Nightfall of Diamonds means we get to talk a little hippie first before we talk baseball. I gotta start with that. R.I.P. to as far as the hippie community goes and 60s and all that stuff. Country Joe McDonald. Hey, 1, 2, 3, what are we fighting for? Yeah, Country Joe and the Fish. But Country Joe McDonald crosses over. Iconic as far as the psychedelic scene is concerned back in the day. Okay. Condolences definitely go out to his peeps and all the folks that knew and loved the man. So the Ursay collection hit the block, which means Tiger sold yesterday. They were thinking it was going to only fetch for maybe 1 or 2 million. It ended up going for 11.5 million. And you folks who may not know what I'm talking about, Tiger, one of the Irwin guitars that Jerry Garcia used to play. Especially probably the last. I think Tiger was the last guitar he played at 7995 at Soldier Field. It was funny because the guy that bought it was sitting next to Derek Trucks. Yeah, that Derek Trucks. And everybody's like, "Oh yeah, Derek Trucks," and I'm like, Derek Trucks ain't got no $12 million. I mean, don't even get me started when it comes to the insanity of this. And apparently, Gilmore's guitar went for 14 million. I'm just like going, it's a fucking guitar, people. I mean, walking around with the ridiculously priced Jordan Kobe card as a necklace, and you people spending 15, $12 million on guitars just because it was a moment that it was an instrument that helped a lot of us get our groove on and get through whatever it is we were going through, the life that music does for people. But come on, man, the absurdity here is just beyond comprehension. My goodness. $11.5 million for Jerry Garcia's Tiger. So that was part of the Ursay collection. I think that overall they made like 93 million, I believe. Other thing on the hippie bus, the Biscuits divorce goes public with Alan giving his side, Brownie responding on the Andy Frasco podcast. What a fiasco all this stuff is. I'm glad everybody's out there talking about it, and there's a certain amount of transparency, if not misunderstanding. But it's really uncomfortable. It's kind of one of those scratching your fingers on styrofoam, the styrofoam egg cartons moments. And it's kind of unfortunate, but and even though we know now that we know, wasn't a good thing because that's even making people more angry as far as that world is concerned. All I can say is, let's get fish at the spear so we can start talking about some positive things when that happens. There's some other good, festy stuff that seems to be happening on the horizon. Yeah. Anyway, that's what's happening on that bus. Let's get to the real Nightfall of Diamonds. USA gets help. Right. You didn't think they weren't going to be in the knockout round. As we were talking about the other day, what a travesty it would have been. Although this Italy team, I'm like going, y'all sure you want to run up against them again? They've been handing out some bruisings. I will give Puerto Rico their flowers. They actually came back and made this because I was supposed to be watching Nashville and Columbus. But this game extended itself, and it was like 8-1, I thought, when I turned, and it ended up being 8-6. So, yeah, a lot of good stuff going on here as Italy makes its first semi-final appearance in World Baseball Classic history. And I talked about this the other day, right? De La Rosa, and wondering, should he be catching as much heat as he apparently is? I'm like, make your mind up, people. Do you actually care about this stuff? Or is it because you saw that we lost, you had your clickbait rage for over 2 minutes, and now you have to chime in about something you probably don't know because you really haven't been following it. You just know that we lost to Italy, and that's not supposed to freaking happen. Mm, 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 mm. But yeah, the U.S. got it done last night. What was it, like 5-3? They beat Canada. Obviously, a lot of good baseball players in North America. Um, yeah, what else do we have here? Good grief. Oh, it's kind of speaking of cards. It's kind of interesting to see something on the modern standard. A few weeks ago I was talking about the rare Honus Wagner, the T206. But I was kind of wondering, what is the standard for this generation, especially baseball players? And I guess now we know, as a Aaron Judge one of a kind card sets a modern, and I say modern, standard of $5.2 million. Yeah, I know. All right. Again, for a card. And this is a card of Aaron Judge, who, don't get me wrong, a man is a incredible baseball player. Man, right? Winning the batting title and hitting that many home runs. I mean, at him and Shohei doing this Ruthian kind of stuff. Lou Gehrig, like, people that put up those ridiculous numbers in this particular era, it's fantastic. But I'm still thinking 5.2 million, even for a one of a kind card. And this is just so you can have it appreciate, because once again, you got that much money that you just have to have a card that you have in a vault. If it was somewhere where you could see it and charge a little admission, and people could look at it in a glass case and hope it's theft proof, so nobody can do a smash and grab on your ass. Oh boy. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. How about the baseball geeks never giving it a rest? God, I saw this recently and I was kind of laughing. Let me see if I can bring this up. Yeah. Okay. Auberg's leads back up to 4. Young had a little boo boo at 18. Okay. Let me see if I can bring this up here. We're sitting here having a good time on Saturday. Now that I get to watch Columbus and Nashville 0-0 in the 28th minute. Definitely looking forward to some LAFC a little bit later as they play St. Louis City at the BMO. Wow. Okay. I know. The problem is my computer's like way across the room, and my eyesight's so bad. Okay, I'll scrap. I was gonna show the baseball geeks were doing this comparison, and it was basically Mike Trout's career versus Ken Griffey Jr.'s. And they were trying to make the argument as the young generation trying to discount us folks who were holding on to these old icons, that Trout's career is actually better than Griffey's. And I'm thinking, well, you know what? If he wasn't the Mickey Mantle of this generation, always hurt, and what could have been, maybe you could make that argument. That's not to say Griffey didn't have his share of injuries as well. But you get where I'm coming from. It's just kind of like, folks, you have lots of time on your hands and you like to come up with these infographics, and it's all fun and games. Like, Mike Trout. you really look at it and you start dropping all this stuff like war and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it's unfortunate that he hasn't been as healthy. And it'd be curious. If you look at his numbers, they are very impressive. I will say that. Um, okay. Let me take a quick ride on the Zamboni so we can ride around the ice rink of life, as we like to say in the Foxhole. I got two takes here. Let's say the power rankings are pretty much the same, other than the Sabres have supplanted the Tampa Bay Lightning. Right, the Tampa Bay still sucks, but it's pretty been steady for the last 5 or 6 weeks. But the Avs obviously on top, and so to that point, so as we were watching a Kraken game, this is kind of the same night, oddly enough, that I was watching Live Golf, and this was after the Kraken and Avs, and we're just watching them, trying to get a sense of what's happening up the road in Seattle. And yeah, there was a decent crowd at Climate Pledge Arena, I guess is what it's called. But I didn't really get the sense that there's a lot of energy going on there with that team. And people were just kind of there. I know the Avs were really putting it on it at the time. But I have to say, it was kind of weird that particular night. Watching the Avs and Kraken and just like going, man, I'm just not feeling this. And then seeing Liv from Singapore and saying the same thing. Like I said, maybe we're just sour curmudgeons, or maybe the product really ain't all that. Ooh, yeah, but it was like one of those things where you're kind of just sitting here, and I just think that people were just there. There was just no energy that I could detect whatsoever from watching that game. All right, folks, we're ice cold chilling. You know we're cooking. When we return, we'll do a closer look. See you shortly. All right then. Welcome back to the Foxhole. Your favorite host, Ken Harlan here. Ice cold chilling, kind of like racking up a good Saturday, or at least the first part of it. We got NBA basketball and some good MLS, and obviously some conference championship action going on. So a lot of things to feast as far as the smorgasbord that sports is giving us right now. Glad you're tuning in to accompany the weekend by following it. As always, like and subscribe the YouTube channel. Tell your friends about it. All that sort of thing. And if you want to be a part of the Foxhole and come on Aftershocks where we can talk it up, or even come on here, video isn't your thing, let's make it happen. Okay, time to opinionate, editorialize, talk a little trash. A closer look coming at you. Well, March, as we all know, is Women's Month. So we're going to have a closer look dedicated to the ladies. You know where I'm starting with. How about the Queens of Insanity? Well, the March 10th deadline came and passed, as we talked about in Aftershocks earlier in the week. And I tried to ingest as much as I can about this, and it seems like there's some reasonable numbers being put forth by the league. And still, we have no agreement. I've been out of the loop on this for the last 2 days. Like many people are just kind of tired of it. It's like, are you going to have a deal? I think Engelbert and Adam Silver have expressed that if we don't have a deal by Monday, there will be a delay. Well, wasn't that the case last Monday? I mean, and there are so many things that need to happen, as the people who talk about this continually point out. Among those, all the drafts and the expansion drafts and free agency. None of this stuff is happening because Brianna Stewart on the podcast sitting here, anybody who will listen, well, this is not satisfactory. I mean, it's clear that somebody's going to cave at some point. It's just how much does the league want to give? Because we're talking about strike. Well, go on strike. We'll see how it affects the rank and file. And as I've already seen, with what's going on with FIBA and the whole Caitlin Clark thing, which I'll get to in a second. Right? I mean, she's the show. That's all these people care about. They don't care about y'all. So I can see if you want to hold out and burn it down, but she's the show. And what is going on with her and Angel Reese? I mean, right? They didn't start Angel one game. They didn't start Caitlin, and then obviously the Angel's not passing the ball to her. And it's just, once again, why it's so unlikable. And if it does go down, it'll be so deserving of idiots that don't know a good thing and how to basically eat at the trough that is providing the spice of life that Ponce de Leon was chasing way back in 1513 when he discovered Florida and all these other wonderful places. I mean, really, folks, at what point do you come to your senses? I mean, you're not going to get top level. Your league's not top level. You never want to discuss why you're kind of a bit of liability. Then it's really about Caitlin Clark. And it's all of a sudden, if it was like Caitlin Clark, I would just say F you MFers and just become the next Rebecca Lobo. right? And do exhibitions. Come up with your own version of the Savannah Bananas. Because it's just where we are with these silly billies. It truly is. Anyways, I'll continue to talk about that. Another interesting conversation, like I said, this is Ladies Month, of the mom agents. And this would be talking about Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels. So far, Jaden's mom is avoiding the arrows and slings, but the conversation, how it's pivoted around Lamar in the aftermath of the failed Max Crosby trade. And I talked about that on Aftershocks. But it all sort of going back towards, if Lamar's mom had a real agent that knew all of the other agents, there probably could be a better deal that could have happened faster. They wouldn't have had to have gotten cold feet. And I'm just sitting there like, okay. While it could be true that she isn't a conventional agent, not part of the good old boys network of Elise Steinbergs and Drew Rosenhaus, I get that sort of thing. But until mom makes a bad financial decision, I mean, sure, she's probably not as accessible and probably has views as far as what she wants, or I don't know, how do I say this? I mean, I just feel that she has her own style. Views was the wrong word, but she has her own style and approach to dealing with managing her son's career. And this is the same thing going on with Jaden's mom. And I don't think we should be too critical until they really make a bad decision. I mean, Lamar's getting paid. If Jaden can stay healthy, he's going to get paid. It might be a pain in the ass for the teams as far as structuring their plans, as far as getting them to see the light a certain way. But otherwise, I don't get why, the mostly male-dominated sports media is sort of, slinging arrows. I expect, like in the case with the Ravens, I'm sure it goes even deeper than Lamar as far as how this thing that they didn't end up having Max Crosby and Trey Hendrickson. I don't know if you can really push that on Lamar's mom. And I'm sure she is a pain in the ass to deal with. Just as Scott Boras is a pain in the ass to deal with. Just saying. But yeah, Mama knows best. And it's interesting, though, that you see these two quarterbacks, and Lamar's kind of, the face right now, and Jaden could be down the road. That as opposed to being represented by these power agents, you've got to deal with Mama. And they're both, and Jaden's mom, being certified now. It's just something y'all are going to have to deal with. I mean, I don't know. There was plenty of exploitation going on before, so you can't blame somebody, especially if they're being responsible and they get their dollars and it's up being spread around the people that need to be. Right? I don't know. If it was, like I said, a situation where it looked parasitic, some of these people might have reason to bitch and moan, but they don't, right? So I think that is less of an issue than, the first point I was making about the Queens of Insanity not knowing a good thing. Because obviously Mama knows a good thing, and she's making sure she manages it, in both of these guys' cases. Okay, folks, that's what's happening. See, that wasn't too harsh as far as where you thought I might have been going with that segment. But yeah, we'll definitely be keeping an eye on what's going on with the Queens of the Court in terms of, can they get something going here before it all completely burns down? Okay, we will come back with the NFL report and some TMCA time to get you out of here on this Super Saturday. All right, well, welcome back to the Foxhole, closing you out here for episode 305. Checking in a little MLS. Getting ready to flip over so I can watch a little 360. Fun Saturday. Actually kind of peeking in at the Celtics and the Wizards. The tanking Wizards that allowed Bam to score 83 points. Those Wizards. Yeah. And no surprise, the Celtics are up by like 40. No, 32. Okay, not quite 40, but it might as well be. And it probably will be before it's all said and done. Shameful stuff, y'all. Shameful ass stuff. Okay, let's go the NFL. Let's get us out of here. We're going to go out and try to fly the drone, even though it's a little windy before the Laker game. Let's start off with the greedy NFL. It's not enough to try to monopolize every day of the week. But now the brainiacs are like, well, why don't we have a Thanksgiving Eve game? It's like, man, you're already deboning Sundays enough on the back end of the schedule, especially, the 1 o'clock window where we're stuck watching the Cardinals play somebody bad, and then the bad Raiders playing somebody else, and that being pretty much the extent of. Come on, man. We don't need a Thanksgiving Eve. I mean, I'll watch, but we don't need a Thanksgiving Eve game. But hey, we can maximize the eyeballs, Ken. Yeah. The NFL trying to just brainwash us and constantly say, no, you gotta be watching. I think this is interesting. Mr. Snyder, the architect of the great reigning champions and what they've been able to do in his era. He came out this week and said that the new tax laws, because, their governor, she's got ideals. She's saying that they could have a negative impact on the Seahawks, probably the Huskies as well. And these things are all true, right? In terms of now free agency, and do we let the lunacy of our need to be entertained allow us to create exemptions for these guys so we can have good teams? Otherwise, they're not going to go to California teams. They're not going to go to Washington. They're going to go to places like Florida. No income tax? Yo, hook me up. So this is definitely something to keep an eye on. Okay, obviously the league year began. Way too much movement to really keep your eyes on. Obviously the interesting things you would see. I talked about that on Aftershocks. A lot of big moves this week, all over the place. Some teams doing what they always do, which is not a lot. Some teams being very deliberate about how they went about their business. Gotta love my Commanders having fun with their fans because, fan bases in the no fun league they tend to be a very passionate bunch, some more than others. And I think, the Commanders / Redskins, even though the sun hasn't really shined on them much in the last 30 years, it's safe to say they're somewhere in the top 10. As far as being fervent, rambunctious, and downright always angry and questioning everything the organization does. And Adam Peters, who rightfully should be criticized given how the Commanders fell off the shelf in year 2 of his tenure, got off to a slow start. And then he really started cooking. And the Commanders have added a lot of pieces and have addressed a lot of needs. And the Commanders, having fun with that, put out a social media post where it's like, day 1 of free agency, you got like a crying baby describing the fans, and then a roaring lion on day 3. Even they get it. This time of year is so funny with the fan bases, especially the folks who live and die with this. Why aren't you doing anything yet? Well, why didn't you grab this guy? How is this gonna line us for the draft? Fun stuff. It'll be interesting to see, some of the other storylines that crop up there, especially with the Chiefs adding Kenneth Walker to third and Travis coming back for year 14. Some of the other things that they're trying to do, because, Andy Reid's not going to stand put. The Falcons coming out and saying that there's going to be an open competition between Tua and Michael Penix. No surprise there, as we talked about in Aftershocks the other day, that the situations in Minnesota and Atlanta where people are looking around the building and just like saying, well, this may not be it. And right, Kyler landing in Minnesota. Don't know what to make of that. I mean, there's a lot of people that feel his style is not compatible with what O'Connell does there. But yet they made a move there, which tells you all you need to know how they feel about J.J. McCarthy. And then lost in this, where does Captain Kirk actually land? Who takes a flyer on him? Because, when it comes to making a fat check, nobody does it better than that guy. But what we saw last year, he clearly doesn't have his fastball, but there was enough bad quarterback play. There's got to be somebody out there, at least as a bridge, and that'll be kind of interesting to see what the Raiders do, especially if they go with Fernando Mendoza with the number 1 pick. The Titans, bringing Trubisky on, which is kind of interesting and makes me wonder how the folks in the building are feeling about Cam Ward. You see how, the new stadium they've rolled out, and they also did a did a little bit of a rebrand as far as the helmet, the jerseys. The jerseys more look Oiler-esque now, which is kind of a good look, I suppose. Yeah, it's going to take a minute for me to really digest that one. Definitely love the comments from the peanut galleries as far as that goes. And the Shador story is getting weirder and weirder. I was talking earlier, the heartbeat goes from Boulder to Cleveland, and some folks coming out talking about his work habits, Lamar and Kyler Murray, and that basically had to be told how to study film. People apparently saying which are facts, but don't let the Shador sexuals and the Dion sexuals, the prime sexuals, hear that. I saw some of the sound bites from some of these wackos defending their king. Whew. Hey, you gotta give it to these folks. The fact that you could follow a Nepo baby so much to where you continually provide content for folks like myself to comment and giggle about, that's no small feat. Yeah, plenty to say about this in the weeks to come. The 49ers getting Mike Evans, that's kind of interesting. Not sure what the hell's going on with Trent Williams or what the situation is with Ayuk. And is Ayuk going to join homeboy from Tampa Bay that just went to Washington? Jaden trying to get all the boys in the band together. Yeah. Alrighty. So interesting now that we've gotten through the first wave of free agency. We're now moving towards the draft madness and all the pivoting that's going on there. And all you couch capologists trying to figure out, well, how much money do we have to move and who can we really designate for June 1st cuts and all that sort of thing. 365, 24/7. The NFL always is delivering something. Okay. Well, the trucks from the foundry have rolled up since I told them not to come yesterday. They were not happy. So the stainless steel bowls that contain the smelliest varieties, they are extra ripe, having to wait a day over at the foundry. The stainless steel bowls of the smelliest varieties that go to people whose distinctions during the week have earned that. Or as we like to say, them being who we be. Consult the wire to really know what I'm talking about. The Tommy Carcetti thing. They come in complimentary, regular, and XL sizes. So who's getting the awards this week in TMCA time? Well, Bam Adebayo for being such a bitch ass. I mean, he could have just did what he did and kind of walked away, but to sort of flex the way and think that he actually accomplished something that was really WWE, that is worth 3 XLs to me. That's a 3 strip. 3 XLs for Bam Adebayo. Hell yeah. I'm going to give 3 to his coach, Eric Spoelstra, for condoning it and then trying to double talk your way through it all when you know it was a sham of 2 travesties and the biggest mockery. Yeah, you get a 3 strip as well. I don't know how to do this one. I'm gonna give this one 2 XLs, even though I know it's not. You shouldn't be making light of this kind of thing, and there's probably more to it. But still, former Kansas City Chief Darren Lee. I guess he killed his girlfriend, which is tragic. We're not making light of that, but he's getting the award for asking ChatGPT how to cover it up. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think you deserve 2 XLs for, really, dude? Wow. I gotta give Keith Olbermann an XL well, give him 2. For being so salty about Lou Holtz. Do you have to comment on everything? And then, just because, he tended to lean to the right, go out and take your salty vitriol, which you seem to have for anything that's connected to that part of the world. There's just sometimes you just can be quiet, even if you feel a certain way. And obviously, Keith Olbermann can't do that. Oh, man. I'm going to give 2XLs to Ohio State President Ted Carter. Another one of you guys getting taken down because of the bad behavior narrative. Really, man? I mean, College Press, they make some pretty good scroll. And because you can't control your tallywhacker, you got to give that all up and put shame to everybody that's around you? Nah, man. That ain't right. I've already talked about Jalen Rose earlier in the week. This is like a 4-strip, man. I mean, this is like 4XLs. Anybody that says salary caps are akin to slavery, I mean, that's some Einstein shit that even right, the great man himself would crawl out of the ground and say, "Dude, you gotta pour me a martini." He didn't say that, did he? Wow. And guys, everybody's safe. We'll just give that crazy lady that shut up Riri, Rihanna's crib, and was going around saying, Rihanna was dissing Rihanna before that leaving video, so you're gonna get busted. Yeah, I shouldn't be making light of the mental health crisis that's going on, but wow, that takes the cake. That's definitely worth 3XLs. Shooting up Riri's crib, and then there's a whole electronic footprint. Just say, yeah, I'm the one that did it. Wow. I've been talking about memorabilia all day, but I gotta give whatever fool that spent $200K to acquire Caroline Bissett Kennedy's product coat, I gotta give them at least an XL. Just being like, wow, being that obsessed about Camelot that never was. Okay, folks, it's been fun. A little bit later this week because we rolled out a lot of content. So check out both Aftershocks episodes that there's one out, there'll be another as soon as I get done cutting it. Tell your friends as always. A lot of good sports to come this weekend, so definitely enjoy some good food and adult beverages. As we always say, stay safe. Stay sane. Definitely avoid the bracelets along the way. We'll see you in 6 to 8 days as always. Definitely look out for some aftershocks again, probably Tuesday or Wednesday. You never know what else we may roll out. Fun times in the Foxhole. Until then, keep it real, keep it tight, keep it clean.